Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is Pat Clifford, and I'm a member of the Executive Committee for the League of Women Voters in the Acton area. And I want to welcome you to our 2023 Municipal Election Candidates Forum for the town of Acton. As we begin, we want to thank the town manager, the municipal properties and IT departments of the town for arranging this space for us and making the room available. Thank ActonTV, who's in there, for the live broadcast and the recorded rebroadcast that you'll be able to see over the course of the next couple of weeks. And most especially, I want to thank our league committee who organized this event, Marilyn Peterson, Lori Cooney, Janet Adachi, and Alyssa Robinson. We would also like to acknowledge the candidates who have joined us tonight and are coming forward to run for office. It's a big step, and we very much appreciate your stepping forward to make democracy work with us. You've stimulated important conversations during your campaigns, and we hope you will energize voters to come to the polls, and wish you all the best of luck. The League has a long tradition of providing nonpartisan voter education and services, particularly at the local level. We are fortunate to have an accomplished veteran of this tradition as our moderator tonight, and I am now pleased to introduce Nancy Brumbaum from the Sudbury League of Women Voters. Nancy.
Thank you all. Thank you, Pat, and I add my welcome to all of you. I don't mean my back to you, but I need to see them. Before we start, let me run through a brief review of the format and the rules for tonight's forum. First, we'll be hearing from the candidates in the order in which the offices appear on the ballot. That's why the moderator goes first. Candidates in uncontested races will have a chance to make a 2-minute statement. Candidates in the contested races will make a 1-minute opening statement, be asked 3 questions, and then make a 1-minute closing statement. The select board and school committee candidates will be asked some additional rapid fire questions just to keep it interesting. Opening statements will be in the order the candidates appear on the ballot, and closing statements in the reverse order. But I will call on candidates to answer questions in a random order during the question and answer part. Candidates have 90 seconds to answer each question. Candidates may not interrupt each other, may not make personal references about other candidates, and because we have such a packed schedule, there'll be no time for rebuttals. We're just going to go straight through the questions, so no rebuttals tonight. There's a timer in the front row right here in the corner. She will hold up a 50-second sign. When you have 15 seconds left, that means you should start winding down your thought, and then a stop sign when your time is over. I won't cut you off right in the middle of the sentence, but I will cut you off if you keep going on too long. The community was invited to submit questions by email, and the League developed the questions you will hear tonight based on those emails from the community. If you don't hear your question asked tonight, we encourage you to contact the candidates directly and ask them the questions. Finally, for those who may be watching this program later on television, a quick note that we recorded it on April 10th. So anything that happens after April 10th that should be discussed won't be discussed. Finally, first of all, we're going to start with the uncontested candidate for town moderator for a 2-minute statement. So Joanne Barry. And Joanne, maybe you can just use the podium here. It might be easier.
Hello, everyone. As Nancy said, I'm Joanne Barry. I am currently serving as town moderator, have been since 2019, and was the assistant moderator for a few years prior to that with Peter Ashton when he was moderator. My goal has always been to make the meeting fair and hopefully a good use of people's time so that you feel it's an effective way to participate in your government, because it is your government. Anyone can go to town meeting, and to be a member of town meeting, all you have to do is be a registered voter and show up. And that's your democracy, that's your opportunity to participate in the discussions and ask questions, make your point directly to the legislative body, you will be working on the agenda or the warrant submitted by the executive branch of our government, the select board. Every vote is equal in that room. I would like to point out that there will be a good, strong number of citizen petitions, which our legislators followed the rules, submitted something they want discussed. So we will be doing that as well. It's a very robust agenda. I do want to point out one of the things that we all know about town meeting is it is not equally accessible to all. It just isn't. That's the way it is. But we have done some things to help make it more accessible to more people, including you can get a free ride using Crosstown Connect, which I'm sure Franny could tell you all about. And as long as you call up by noontime on Friday, April 28th, you can get a ride to and from town meeting. That number will be right in the front of the warrant, or you can find it on the website at Town Hall. So I urge anyone who feels uncomfortable driving at night, or you just don't have a way to get there, to do that. There is preferred seating near the entrance to the auditorium for those with mobility issues. Handheld mics can be brought around to anyone who can't stand in line and wait for their turn. We have the audio translator, video, the closed captioning, whatever you want to call that. We have that, which everyone, actually, I think that's super helpful for a lot of people. I hope we will be able to have a family-friendly area that could also be socially distanced, which will be kind of the we always used to call it overflow, but the town meeting improvement committee discovered that that would be a very popular thing. So if you want to have kids with you, you'll still be able to participate. 2-minute time limit on speakers from the floor. We've done this for quite a while. Electronic voting, and shorter presentations in general. I urge you to check the video presentations, which will be popping up on ActonTV shortly, and ask questions ahead of time if you can, but also to familiarize yourself with what is coming up. Hope to see many of you there. And thank you for your vote on April 25th. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if the select board candidates would come up and sit, and you will have name tags, so sit behind your name tag. There are 3 candidates for 2 3-year terms for select board. I'll ask you to turn on the mic in front of you. You push the little button in the center until it comes on red. Everybody got their mics on? Remember, your mic is on now. So we are going to start with opening statements of 1 minute each. The first candidate to speak will be James Snyder Grant for 1 minute. Thanks.
It's great to have the return of in-person candidate nights. I'm so tired of Zoom meetings. The first 2 years of my term on the select board were mostly by Zoom, and it really got in the way of democracy and participation. Although, in another way, it did help because the number of people who were able to attend and participate was a lot higher. I've loved being on the select board. I look forward to going back if that's the will of the voters. I came in mostly interested in working on environmental issues. It turned out once I got there that the important part of being on the select board is that you're responding to all the questions that come forward, and you're working with a set of 5 people, your fellow board members, and all the town staff. It's great. I look forward to going back if that's what the people want.
Thank you. The next candidate is Alissa Nicol.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you to the League for hosting this forum. Thank you to all the voters who are here today to learn about the issues and perspectives of the candidates seeking local office, and a huge thank you to all the candidates who are willing to serve the community. I'm running for Select Board because I care deeply about this community. I discovered a few years ago just how much the local government impacts the lives of residents and just how much of an impact volunteers can make on the effectiveness effectiveness, transparency, and decision-making of the local government. So I started volunteering on a variety of committees. I volunteer and support many community organizations as well, and I work part-time in a district elementary school. Acton is facing some significant issues in the near term, and we need effective advocacy from leadership for good decision-making, and I will bring a fresh perspective and openness to new ways of doing things and creative, innovative solutions to the many challenges we face. Thank you.
Thank you. And the third candidate is Franny Osman.
Thank you very much to all of you for organizing it and for coming. It helps to talk to an audience. Today was a typical day like it was before the pandemic. And I took the train in to Boston to lobby our legislators for bills that the Massachusetts Public Health Association supports. And when I was there, I saw a lot of the colleagues that I've worked with over the years from nearby towns, or even somebody from one of our town committees, people from Western Mass, people from state agencies, and nonprofit organizations. And those are the people that we work with. And one of the things I bring to being on the select board that I did when I was on the select board, and then I will again now, is knowing who those partners are that we educate, that we learn from, and that we collaborate with, and that we teach. So I look forward to continuing to answer your questions.
Thank you. So we'll get to the first question. You each have 90 seconds to answer the question. Be sure your mic is on before you begin speaking. So here it is. For most years, the early budget proposals exceed the available anticipated revenue. What is your approach to ensuring that the budget meets service demands and program priorities without exceeding the allowable 2.5% increase in property taxes? And it goes first to Ms. Osman. Again, make sure your mic is on.
Thank you. A lot of things have improved in our budgeting. A few years ago at town meeting, it was looking at tiny little decisions and parts of the budget on the floor. Now we have the Acton Leadership Group to help prepare the budget beforehand, which helps a lot. I would try to keep down spending by looking at regionalization, by participating in public-private efforts, by not repeating work that we've done before. For example, Kelly's Corner, we did all this work with consultants and the planning department and the Kelly's Corner committee. Now that we will return to it, we don't want to start from scratch. So we want to make sure that we use work that we have done. Also, more coordination between the school and the town, and using studies that other towns have done. I'm the vice chair of the MAGIC subregion of our planning agency, and one of the things that MAGIC is good for is sharing efforts that each other do, and that's what I was referring to. That's why I was mentioning the advantage of having colleagues to network with and to draw from. I also want to strengthen our economic development here and do efforts such as the COD, the Commission on Disabilities, and the Economic Development Department is doing to highlight businesses that are stop.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder Grant, do you need the question again? Are you good?
No, it's fine. We're talking about the budget process and how we keep things, within the limits. So within a particular year, the town manager and his staff do the work of coming back to the board with a budget that is within the limits. So the most important impact we have as board members is actually a few months earlier in the goal-setting process. That's where we take input from the public, input from staff, and agree on a set of short-term goals and long-term goals. Those in turn, especially with this town manager, are what drive the staffing process and the budget process. And I think that's appropriate. I don't think that, a set of 5 volunteers really do have the skill to go through a multi-million-dollar budget and figure out where there's overspending and where there's underspending. That's what town staff are for. In the longer run, we do have the work of working together with our partners in the schools, because we're both bound by Proposition 2.5, which allows the tax levy to grow by 2.5% a year, unless there's an override vote. And salaries, which make up most of the expenses of this town, are going up faster than that. So at some point, we're going to need to have those hard discussions with each other, and I look forward to being a part of those discussions.
Thank you. Ms. Nicol.
Thank you. So I appreciate the efforts of the Acton Leadership Group, which is throughout the year the select board, the town staff, the school administration, and representatives from the select board and the finance committee and the school committee to create a budget that does not exceed our revenue. And I think that that's been working pretty well. Obviously, we have sometimes debt exclusion, which we vote on at town meeting, and I think it's really important in those instances to get a lot of community input. I know that recently the select board discussed whether or not to increase the CPA surcharge from 1.5% to 3%, and although there were a lot of folks that were supportive of that on different boards and committees, the select board listened to the community members and chose not to bring that forward to town meetings. So I think being responsive to the community is really key. The town is pretty financially well managed. We can see that in the what are they called? Popular annual financial reports. We just got an award for one. So you can see that our budget increases are not that high when you look at Acton compared to comparable communities. I would definitely encourage the town manager to continue getting grants, even considering hiring a procurement officer, even though that's a salary. That person's salary would be paid many, many times over with incoming grants, and also continue to support the regional agreements that we have that help us save money. Thanks.
Thank you. Second question, why do you think the former McDonald's restaurant in Kelly's Corner has been vacant for over a decade? And does its vacancy point to an issue in town government that you would like to see changed? What experience do you have in resolving a similar challenge? And Ms. Nicol gets this one first.
Yay, thank you. I believe that some of the issues, and this is all hearsay, I haven't gone back and looked at any meeting minutes or recordings, that there were some issues with zoning. So I think that the town is due for a serious review of its zoning, not just at Kelly's Corner, but the entire town. We need to really look at zoning in a cohesive way. So I did hear that there were some roof line issues with that building that prevented some restaurant from coming in. I've also heard that there were just some issues with individual select board members, and I cannot confirm or deny that. I think that it's really important that we have an economic development director now who has a plan to do an inventory of what we have in town, what we don't have in town, where the empty storefronts are. And it's important for the select board in the goal setting process that was mentioned earlier to focus on some economic development goals, because those have been lacking. And so I would push for that during the goal setting process.
Thank you. Ms. Osman.
Yes, this is an issue close to my heart. I have brought a citizen's petition to town meeting asking us to go back to the table to look at not just the Kmart property, but all of Kelly's Corner. In 2015, we created, with the help of Kelly's Corner Planning Committee, Steering Committee, with the help of consultants and our planning department. We spent so much money and so much time creating a vision with public engagement of what we wanted Kelly's Corner to look like, which, according to our master plan, people wanted it to be a center, a gateway, a center. We almost passed. More than 60% of the voters at town meeting in 2016 said they wanted this planned zoning, and it didn't quite pass by 16 votes. So what did we do? 7 years later, we still haven't gone back to the books. So while it is useful, and while we do look at zoning all over the town, I don't think we should waste everything that we did there. I don't think our public opinion or the situation in Kelly's Corner has changed enough not to take advantage and just update our plan. And that's what I went to town meeting to ask us to do. Take advantage of all the work that we've done and finish. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder Grant.
I agree with everything that Alissa and Franny have said. I'll add a couple of other pieces to this puzzle. The first is that that entire lot, including the old Kmart, is owned by the Stop and Shop Corporation. And they have been not very forthcoming about their plans. They have recently decided to come forward with a plan that would replace the Kmart with a Stop and Shop with 2 3,000 square foot retail spaces on either side. Not clear to me that we need another grocery store right across the street from Roach Brothers, but such is the way of capitalism. And I think the select board gets to whittle away from time to time at the power of capitalism, and I think we should continue that. The previous restaurants that have tried to go in there, Panera Grill was a large corporation that didn't really have the time or the temperament to deal with our particular zoning laws. When they got some pushback and didn't get the variances they want, they walked. 110 Grill was a little more complicated, but it was a similar story. I agree that we need the economic development plan, which is part of what's coming to town meeting now. The other thing we need is a new comprehensive master plan to set the context for all these things. And that's coming up in the next 3 years. I really look forward to working on that if I'm reelected.
Thank you. Now for the third question. In your opinion, is the select board currently operating collaboratively? And what skills and attributes would you bring to the position? Let me start with Mr. Snyder Grant.
I think we've come a long way. I think we're doing pretty well. There are still, it's not like we all agree all the time. We have some 4-to-1 votes, but the spirit that's there, I think is very collaborative. People listen to each other, and there's a lot of respect. I've never heard any of the select board members talking down about other select board members, which I think is a great sign of the organizational health. One of the things I'm looking forward to, if I'm reelected, I would perhaps become chair, which I have never been before. And I'm looking forward to finding ways to increase that sense of collaboration and increase the ways for the public to participate and increase the transparency of what we're doing there. In particular, I'm curious about when we do have those 3-to-2 votes or 4-to-1 votes, let's take the time, let's schedule the time afterwards to understand what those differences were and talk them through so that we're not always talking through things in the context of a particular vote, but we're understanding each other's thinking, each other's points of view. And I think that would be really helpful for the town, because I think the board does represent a variety of points of view, and we don't get a lot of chance to really explore those differences in a creative way.
Thank you. Ms. Nicol.
Thank you. This is a really interesting question for me because I've actually had some conversations with a few residents about the dangers of having a board that is of one mind and then change comes too quickly, or we move in one direction a little bit too far, one way or another. So I think it is very good to have 5 board members of different minds, different skill sets. The current board, I think that they work very collaboratively, even though they disagree and don't have unanimous votes. I expect that would continue with me on the board as well. I never assume that I'm the smartest person in the room, so I would always, always listen to all of the colleagues as well as the public and the staff, and respect that everyone has something to teach me and that I can change my mind, I can learn from them. I also would not ever have an inclination to have an outburst of anger with any of my colleagues or the public or the staff. And I think that that's really critical for an elected official, to make sure that even if the vote didn't go my way, even if I'm disappointed, I'm not going to let you know. I might go home and tell my husband or my cat, but I'm not going to have an outburst in a meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Osman?
Glad to hear that. And I also don't plan on having any outbursts. I find that one of my skills is looking at people, seeing their humanity, seeing their history, seeing their feelings, and being able to have a lot of empathy. And I think the board right now is working very well collaboratively. I think that the board has the advantage of having a variety of opinions. I think that it would continue, if I were on the board, to work in that way. It's a little frustrating. Open meeting law I actually love, but one of the things that's frustrating is that you don't get to know each other outside of meetings very often. Although there are committees that do get together and go for drinks after their meetings, and I think that kind of thing would be a good idea. I think when I was on the select board, people would say, what does the board think of this? And I'd say, we don't talk. I mean, we can't. I can talk to one person on the board outside of a meeting if I have a question. But other than that, I have to respect open meeting. But I think all of the people on the board do have the ability to listen, to respond appropriately, no outbursts. And I think that actually with Himaja leaving, I bring the public health background. We sort of shared that education. And I picture I could take her place in some way. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go now to the rapid fire round. I'll ask you to turn your mics on and leave them on so it picks up, because we're going to be moving quickly, and the cable won't pick it up if you don't have your mic on. These people could hear you, but all the other people out there couldn't. So you please respond with either yes, no, or no opinion. You don't get to elaborate on these. Ready? Should the select board have a formal succession plan for officers and representatives to the Acton leadership group? Mr. Snyder Grant.
No.
Ms. Osman.
No opinion.
Ms. Nicol.
No.
Very good. You've done well. As a candidate in a three-way race for 2 seats, do you support ranked choice voting in town elections? Ms. Osman.
Yes.
Ms. Nicol.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder Grant.
Yes.
Would you hold regular office hours for Acton residents? Ms. Nicol.
Oh, yes.
That's 2 words.
Sorry.
Mr. Snyder Grant.
Yes.
Ms. Osman.
Yes.
And now it's time for 1-minute closing statements. This went very quickly. So in the reverse order from the opening statements for 1 minute, starting with Ms. Osman.
Somebody was saying that there are 3 good candidates and they wanted to have the ability to distinguish between us. It is hard. So I thought all I could do is at least just describe me and what makes me tick. I loved being on the select board in the past, despite some of the stresses. I felt very proud to lead this community, and especially in the fact that Acton is a maverick in some ways, in some issues. I loved working with the staff, the new economic development and DEI staff, the new director at the library, very sad that all the people that I loved working with in the finance department have retired, and we'll have new people coming in, et cetera, et cetera. I enjoy working with them and with the staff and committee members from nearby towns, and I look forward to continuing that useful work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Nicol.
The future we can create together for Acton is one that is intentional and deliberate. A community with excellent services and schools, businesses that serve our needs, and a staff that is highly valued. A welcoming community where residents, workers, and visitors all feel a sense of belonging. Our residents can afford to stay in town as they age. There are available homes for downsizing, and these homes are accessible. Significant progress is being made on the town's climate action plan goals. Residents are civically engaged and well-informed because officials are spending time in effective outreach that reaches all demographics. Collaboration is critical to achieving our community's goals. Collaboration requires compromise, but I will not compromise on the founding ideals of this country: liberty, equality, and opportunity for everyone. Everyone deserves no less than full access to the benefits of society. I will place the humanity and dignity of each of you at the center of all discussions, deliberations, and decision-making.
And Mr. Snyder Grant.
I want to tell you about three things in my 1 minute. First of all, the organizations I've been involved with, Green Acton and New View Co-housing on Half Moon Hill, have consensus at their foundation, bringing people together. And I've played a key role in both those organizations as facilitator and bringing people together. And I look forward to continuing to use that skill in the service of the town. The next is about planning. I was the vice chair of the Acton 2020 plan, and I really look forward to, we have funding for the next comprehensive community plan in the next fiscal year, 25. And really looking forward to that as a large collaboration process. And finally, the climate is a bit of a mess right now. We're in a crisis, although it's not a crisis like we can do a few simple things and then it's over. The world is changing, and Acton is a leader in the state in taking positive action about climate, and I'm committed to that continuing.
Thank you. And now it's time for the school committee. So you have finished your... So the candidates for the school committee will come and sit behind your name tag. There are 6 candidates for three-year terms that are available on the school committee. I would remind you to please remember to turn your mics on. You can leave them on for the whole time or turn them on when you're speaking.
They made a mistake. They gave me the gavel.
I'm supposed to have that. Okay, so we will start with opening statements of 1 minute each in the order that you show up on the ballot. So the first candidate to speak will be Courtney Barrieault.
That letter B, I'm always first. Hello, I'm Courtney Barrieault. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to everybody who participated in making this happen. I'm running for school committee because I'm known in my neighborhood as the go-to Acton expert. I've been here a long time. My parents both grew up here and graduated from high school. I grew up here and graduated from our high school, and I now have children some in district, some not yet there, but quickly approaching kindergarten. So this community means a lot to me. My roots are here, and I would love to be a part of the school committee and give back in that way. I recently was a classroom assistant in district, so I think I bring a nice perspective as a parent and a recent employee. I volunteer my time to run a before-school running club and a play club at my children's elementary school, and I'm also volunteering my time to start a community-wide play club partnered with the Acton Rec Department. I enjoy rolling my sleeves up and doing the hard work that needs to be done to bring our community back together. Stop.
Thank you. The next candidate is Victoria Campbell.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming. So I go by Tori. Victoria is for official use only, or my dad when I'm in trouble, but it will be Victoria on the ballot. I moved to Acton in 2018 after my husband John and I transitioned from over 20 years of military service. And we came here because of Acton's diversity. That was something that we valued and we were really looking for. I teach at a small school near Concord, and I volunteer as an Acton BSA Scoutmaster and youth-focused vice president for a small national sporting federation. As a teacher, I also have 2 master's degrees in education, one in the science of learning, the other in the intersection of policy, practice, and research. This spring, all of 3 of the incumbent educators on the school committee are transitioning out, and that leaves a really big gap. I think that's one that I could help out with, and you could look to me to help interpret education-specific language, approaches, and issues in school committee business. I also have a lot of experience with policy and budget. I study data, I talk to people, I look for where data and perspectives don't match, and that's where I zero in as a place where I think we can really come together to make improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Next candidate is Jason Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Many of you already know me, as we've probably interacted through soccer, baseball, through scouts, or through church groups, or the Douglas community. I have 4 kids, Jason, Grace, Helen, and Faith, in 10th through 4th grade. And my wife, Holly, and I have lived here since 2001, and she works as an assistant in the Douglas School and as a registrar of Acton Boxborough Youth Soccer. Having 4 kids in the schools at various levels has given me a real appreciation for the complexities of education and how success can be defined very differently, even for siblings. Now, when you apply that to the more than 5,000 students in our district, well, that can seem like an insurmountable challenge for everyone, and that's where I come in, because I love taking on seemingly impossible challenges. I look forward to analyzing information, listening to experts, gathering different perspectives, and looking for solid long-term solutions that are effective, not for my own self-interests, but which have the greatest impact on the community. The greatest challenge I would like to address is the reestablishing the sense of connectedness between the community and the schools. Many people have moved here specifically for the school district, the district where the high school ranks in the top 5 often. And yet there's a sense of confusion about what the experiences our kids are getting in these schools. My primary goal in running for the school committee is to reestablish communication in a way that will restore the confidence in our town frankly deserves.
Thank you. The next candidate is Michael Gowing.
Like Tori, I go by Mike. My mother calls me Michael. My name is Mike Gowing, and I'm running for one of the 3 seats currently vacated in the Acton Regional School Committee, and I'd like to ask for your vote. Education has long been a priority for Acton. We've routinely placed in the top 10 statewide by any metric. Now faced with declining enrollment and increasing cost, we're quickly approaching a financial choice that won't be easy. 3/4 of the Acton taxpayers don't have children in the school system, but overwhelmingly supported an override to fund a new twin school because they believe a good educational system is a community value. We have to use our tax dollars wisely. This all sits atop a pandemic that saw a significant drop in MCAS scores and many mental health issues for both teachers and students. We need to explore some creative ways to reverse this problem and get things back on track. We need a gap analysis to determine the best way forward, making up for this lost time. The teaching staff and administration have worked hard and long to produce students that will go into the world and thrive. I believe in them, and I want to support their efforts. I served in many town positions in my 20 years and 10 days here. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate is Leela Ramachandran.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Leela. I am one of the other candidates for school committee. And I think my story really starts with my family. My mom's over there. My grandmother was a teacher and then kind of turned into a principal. My mom came to the US to pursue higher education. And education has always been important to our community and to our family. I graduated from AB. I was there K to 12. I went on to tutor students. My favorite students were the one who said that they were bad at math because it was really fun watching their self-confidence develop. My work in public health research and evaluation, which just means that I'm used to looking at data, kind of talking to community members and seeing what makes sense, what doesn't, and figuring out where there are opportunities to make real change. I have been involved in mentoring AB students, as well as engaged in school committee and town issues. So I have existing relationships with some important folks in our town, and I'm connected enough that my eyes are wide open to the very real challenges facing our district, but also have been distanced enough that I can see the gaps, and I'm excited to start as a member of the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next candidate is Yanxin Schmidt.
Good evening. My name is Yanxin Schmidt. I'm an immigrant, so you probably hear me stumble over some of the pronunciations. I want to serve on the school committee because I believe every child, every student deserves a quality education. I've been volunteering with the AB School District since 2018 when my eldest child entered the school district. Over the past couple of years, I've served as a parent volunteer in the classrooms. I co-chaired the district's DEI Family Advisory Group. Currently, I am a coach with Acton Boxborough Youth Soccer. I serve as a vice president for BAYS, Boston Area Youth Soccer, where I draft policies, overseeing budget, and providing match support for 52 recreational youth soccer clubs. I will support strategies that make all of our students successful. I will engage the members of our town's finance committee and state legislators in conversation about securing adequate funding for our schools. And moreover, I will work with the administration to establish a set of meaningful metrics to evaluate current initiatives aimed at ensuring student success. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will go to the questions, 3 questions. I will ask you in random order. The first question is, what budget experience have you had that makes you ready to provide constructive input into a system with an annual budget of over $100 million? And the first person to get this question will be Ms. Schmidt.
Hi. Big question. Like I said, I serve as a vice president for BAYS, and our annual budget is a little smaller. It's $360,000. Over the past couple years, during the pandemic, BAYS has suffered financial setbacks as well as some kind of triumph because there weren't enough games being played, and therefore there was a surplus of money that needs to be redistributed. Where should we use? How do we support our youth? I am currently working with our finance committee to address that issue. In addition to that, I've actually taken a course that was offered for all school committee members or aspiring school committee members. It's called Charting the Course, where I learned all the vocabulary of budgets, school budgets. So I think I'm well prepared.
Thank you. If anyone needs the question repeated, just ask. The next candidate to answer this one is Ms. Ramachandran.
Hi, folks. So thinking about budgets, I do work in public health, as I mentioned. I both have a full-time job, but I also consult. And through both of those things, we often are looking at how to scope projects. So there's a defined amount of money. We have all of these desirables. We'd love to do a lot of things, to do a lot of good work, and often come up against the tension of really wanting to do that good work and impact community, and then having what's fiscally responsible and realistic. And so I look forward to the opportunity to continue that type of work with the fellow school committee members And I'm also very well aware that I'm not always an expert. And so I would look to folks who have more experience. I would seek out answers that I didn't have to make an informed decision about what we are doing in the district. And I think that everyone here really cares about our students and cares about the community members that are paying taxes that support some of that. And so I have some experience and I look forward to continuing it.
Thank you. Ms. Barrieault.
Well, I wish I could say my household budget was the same, so I'm very used to it. I can't say that, unfortunately. And I would say that I won't pretend that this is a strength of mine that I would bring. My strengths are much more rooted in humanity and community and understanding the day-to-day inside the school building and understanding child development practices very well. To answer the question, I am a great critical thinker. I'm largely collaborative, and I'm grateful this is not a committee of one person. This is why there are a group of us to serve our district and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gowing.
Excuse me, I had a 30-year career in business management and finance in an international corporation as a vice president, and that, in as much when I came to be on the select board, didn't help me much at all. But in that time, my 2 terms on the select board, I learned all about municipal finance and health insurance trust and the ALG process, and working with Beacon Hill on funding issues and trying to get things through. So I am not intimidated at all by large numbers, and I know how to manage budgets and have done them all my working life.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you. So $105 million is a really high number, right? So I've not worked with that much money. I've never had that much money, but I'm really good at spreadsheets. So I will leverage that experience to make sure all the numbers add up. No, but in seriousness, like $105 million, you break it down. You break the problem into smaller pieces and you figure out how to make them all work together. I was on the I was on the Douglas PTO board at one time, and we had to work on that budget. I've been on the Cub Scout committee at that point. We had to work on budgets there. So I'm familiar with the budgetary process. I've not worked on a budget of that size, I will admit that, but I am, and as Courtney said, I'm open to learning and I'm eager to figure out this process.
Thank you. And Ms. Campbell.
So budgets. I got my first budget when I was about 22 years old, and I became the logistics officer for units deploying to Kosovo. That was a lot of money in those days, and I think it was about $4 million. So yeah, $104 million is a lot. Currently, I serve as the VP of Youth Initiatives for Orienteering USA, so I provide input into our budget every year when we make it. That one's about $400K. I'm on the finance committee for my school, and so I look at that very fine balance of, it's a private school, tuition, all of our costs, and yes, personnel costs are high, there's a trend here, and how much we pay for a building, all of those things. I see that many of those things are paralleled as I look at the AB budget, but probably the most relevant experience I have is my time at the Pentagon. I was given a project that was congressionally directed, it had to be done, and it made no one happy because these were the era of drawing down in funding and drawing down in people. And the thing that I brought to that group was I developed 3 courses of action. 2 of them that were directed, people wanted to see them, and one that my boss really didn't want to see. But it was an important one to look at because we needed to know if it worked. And if it worked, we were going to have to be able to consider that because we were going to be told it was important by some other types of units. Turned out when we looked into it that I could go back to my boss with a very clean mind and say, you know what? There are a lot of hidden costs, this won't work, but we did the due diligence.
Thank you. The second question for you. Currently, 2/3 of Acton's budget goes to the schools. The needs of the students are expanding, but the revenues are finite. If elected, what would be your priorities to balance the needs with the available revenues? What are your priorities for the school system in a time of limited revenues? And start with Mr. Gowing.
Okay. Well, obviously, people are aware that Proposition 2.5 is a limiting factor, and Chapter 70 and Chapter 71 are based on student population, which we've seen a decline. When I first was a selectman, we had 5,800 students in the school, and I think we're down to 5,000 now. And that the 5,800 didn't include Boxborough at the time. I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take a whole new look at what we're spending our money on and find efficiencies, because we have to support the efforts of making up for 3 years of loss because of the pandemic. So if that means reallocating funds that were used for something else to ensure that we get that kind of support, then those are hard decisions that have to be made, but they have to be made. So I appreciate the 3/4 of the people in town who don't have children in the system, but support all of this. And we may end up coming to you again. So.
Thank you. Ms. Ramachandran.
Thank you for the question. So I think that there are a few things here. I think number one, there are grants available. One of the grants from DESI right now is a genocide education grant. And so thinking about where we can leverage external funding to help support our community. I think part two, there's an economic development plan that will be coming to town meeting. I support that. And also the economic development director in Acton is pretty new, and she's doing some really good work, and I hope that we can support that. That's not a short-term position, but I hope that long-term work will help support the community and the district to fund the things that we need to fund. I also think we need to think about where we want to prioritize. We can't have students who are all going through the school district without thinking about who is disproportionately struggling, especially after the height of the pandemic. That's often students with disabilities, students who are multilanguage learners, students who are low income, and any kind of combination of those identities. And then there's also a piece that many people move to Acton largely for the good schools, and we need to be investing in those. So I think that there are places where we can look to make sure that the burden is not as high on residents, but also there is going to be some burden because we value our schools, and that helps support our community at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barrieault.
Leela stole a lot of what I was going to say. I agree. I think the economic development is huge. I think that the investment is huge. We are a community that is known for great schools, and if we want that reputation to remain and be honest, then we have to put in the hard work. And I'll come back to my word of community. It's part of our community, our schools, and we need to be in it together. I would love to see fundraising back where it was pre-COVID. I think that is certainly not going to overcome all of our budgetary issues, but it brings us together and it reminds us of our collective goals and helps keep the purpose focused on where we want all of this to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schmidt.
So I've done some research. Now I know every time when the district faces a difficult budget cycle, the first thing we're thinking about is that 75–80% of the spending goes to personnel. And then we started thinking about, okay, what's essential, what's not essential? And I actually had a conversation when I was with one of the art teachers, and she said, you know, people don't say that, but I will tell you, in a very stressful, academically driven, or just stressful environment at all, like the students come to art class, students go to PE, those are the classes that gives them the room to breathe. That's the time that they need away from all the grades, the academic stress and everything. So I think it's a really hard question to answer, that how to prioritize who's essential, who's not. However, when I was digging around on Acton-Boxborough Regional District's website, I found information on district's expenditure for 2020. The out-of-district education spending for that year was over $9 million. 9.2% of the entire expenditure, and also 6,246% higher than similar districts. And if I would look into how do we fund programs in our district so that we can save that money, we can keep the money and the students in the district, so we don't have to do the harsher cuts. That would be my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell.
So, first off, we have a duty to meet our students where they are and give them what they need. But we have to know what those are. So we have to have a clear understanding of where we're at and where we need to go and take a look at that gap. I think Mike mentioned that earlier. And understand what it's going to take to get there. So that is one of the first priorities, is we have to be able to lay that out. Second of all, we've got to understand what we've already done. What have we already cut? What has been the impact? We have to be able to measure these things. And at some point, we've got to be able to articulate to the community, here's where we are. If we continue to cut, here's what the risk looks like. Is this something we as a community are willing to accept? So we need to really be monitoring ourselves very carefully. Community feedback is important. I also think community partnership plays a role here too. We have an amazing community. Okay, so my kids are high schoolers. I didn't mention that earlier, but the parents that they have access to learn from here, the seniors they have access to learn from here. Some of them are in this audience tonight. What an amazing place we have. There are things that we can do that aren't necessarily touching the budget, and some of those initiatives are out there. Apparently, I'm supposed to be on a Zoom right now, but I'm not there. We also want to relook the Chapter 70 agreement. I think there's space where our English language learners are concerned. I'm seeing some numbers that feel like they're a little out of whack with some of the other districts. I think we have a much stronger need there. I want to investigate that further and work with our select board and our state representatives to see if maybe we can't get something more favorable to ACT.
Thank you. And Mr. Fitzgerald.
So I have two comments on this. One is a more practical and one is sort of a moonshot idea. The first comment I'll have on this is we're sending a lot of dollars out of town to charter schools, to vocational schools, to kids with specific educational needs. Every one of those kids we send out of town, they take dollars with them, right, that we fund. So I want to look at measures to reestablish the confidence in the school district to keep those kids in district, to keep that money in district, to support all the kids, right? And it's better for the kids to not have to travel to these distances to, North Shore or wherever it may be. And then the other sort of moonshot idea I have is I'm a software engineer by trade, by career. And at some level, software engineering can be a vocation. And is there opportunities where we could provide, or we could interest private organizations to come in here and sponsor vocational type education like that, where we could give kids a trade right out of high school, because we know that secondary education is just not for everybody. But there's many career paths, right? As I mentioned, success can be defined different ways. So I think there's opportunity here. We can get some sponsorships and we can find some other vocational things that we can do in the classroom.
Thank you. Now for the third question. As the school committee's focus has shifted in recent years towards equity and inclusion, there's a perceived tension between this focus and academic excellence. How do you strike the right balance and ensure that there's room for civil discourse on these issues? And starting with Mr. Fitzgerald.
All right, get to go first on this one. Okay, so striking the right balance. I think, so right off the top, right, we have to define these things, right? And I think that's what we're struggling with so much, is like we throw these terms out here with no definition. What does equity mean, right? What does inclusion mean? Does everybody get to sign up for whatever? Does everybody have the same experience? Is anybody available to do anything? Or do they all have the opportunity? Or do we make a school system where, though people are walking different paths, again, I'm going to go back to the same thing, right? I have 4 kids, they all have different interests. They all don't want the same thing, and nobody wants the same thing for them. They would be miserable. So if we start forcing the same thing on them, they're going to hate it, and they're not going to be happy. So we need to be intelligent about it, and we need to define it. And that's a huge thing that I think we're lacking on. And without defining it, it's a problem that's unsolvable, because we have a moving target that we don't know what we're shooting at.
Okay, the next person is Mr. Gowing.
I think that you look for a balance. When I was talking about how do we make up for the pandemic years in terms of emotional support as well as education, since we want all of our children to come out of the system able to thrive in life. And that requires us to be cognizant of what's going on in their minds, both from a learning standpoint and also from an emotional standpoint. I don't think that you can make anything all of one or all of another. I think you have to intersperse these and use them accordingly. As my colleague said, each child is different and warrants a different approach if necessary. And by pushing a particular theory or program on them, I think it makes it difficult for them to learn. I think they find themselves resisting. And people with children know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schmidt?
Thank you. Thank you, Jason, for bringing up the definition. How do we define these things? The way I define equity is that from the school committee or school perspective is to provide access to all students so that they can find a path to their own success. I think equity and academic success doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Yes, some students perform really well academically. That's where they find who they are. That's the path they want to take. And some students find their passion in sports, art. So that kind of comes back to, when we look at equity to all, we want to provide access to all people, to all students so that they can be who they are, to be successful. And at the same time, do it in a mindful way to understand that, okay, what do you need to be successful? Is the support that we provide to you at the moment, is it helpful to you? I think evaluation, review, and to hold ourselves accountable over the strategies that we have implemented will be very, very important in order for equity and academic success to coexist in the same universe. Thank you.
Ms. Ramachandran?
Thanks for the question. So equity, inclusion, and tension with academic excellence, I agree that I don't think that they're mutually exclusive or at odds with each other. I think they're frameworks, they're lenses through which we do our work. They're not directives that you have to do X or say Y. And I think that we should have common goals and have a shared understanding. I think that that is how I often start trainings that I do, is let's define our terms. And I think that there are definitions out there, and maybe that needs to be clarified. I was also on Acton's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Commission, and I definitely heard some of that some of our community doesn't fully understand what that means. And so kind of continuing to chat with community and really have that feedback opportunity is important. And then I think also there's a piece about honoring and respecting educators as the professionals that they are. And if they're coming to us and saying that changing curriculum or changing the way that we're teaching is best practice, then I think that should be honored. And I appreciate that community members are concerned about what's happening in the schools and really invested in their students' success. And I think that we should be listening to teachers because they often are the ones who have been taught how to do the job. And lastly, I think that it's important to continue to get feedback from students, from educators, from community members about how it's going, and continue to keep going and make iterations that work for our community best. Thanks.
Thank you. And Ms. Barrieault?
I think that when needs are met, excellence prevails. And that speaks to our students and, as Leela mentioned, also our teachers. Our teachers' needs have to be met in order for excellence to come out of the district. I also agree with other statements of definitions need to be in place and measurements. How do we know that we're meeting needs? How do we know that this equity inclusion is taking place? Where are we falling short? How is the community hearing the efforts being put forward? And where are the gaps that need to be closed so that there is no thoughts of tension between these two things that can happily coexist.
Thank you. Now, yes. I knew I was going to do that one time. Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. When I think about this, I often think what we're really talking about is our students' social and emotional well-being, and I often hear that that is also a tension with academic excellence. But a student who doesn't feel like they are capable, who feels like there's something that if they just had this, they could be successful. If the teacher just noticed me instead of talking to all the boys over there, that teacher might know that I actually know something about computer science too. I've heard that from some students. Social and emotional well-being is a prerequisite for academic excellence. These things go together, and they're absolutely critical. So how do we have civil discourse about it? Well, that is the key question. First of all, it takes skill to create an environment where people can really share their thoughts. We have to seek people out rather than just expecting them to show up. Sometimes you have to have somebody knock on your door and go, no, really, I want to know what you think. And then they'll start talking to you. And then they'll start telling you the things that maybe they wouldn't be willing to say in a public forum. And you start hearing just how many people feel like there has to be a right answer to this. And if I don't say the official right answer, it's not okay for me to share this. That's scary. We have to do something about this. Words matter. We have to sit side by side and figure out these definitions. You can hear us all talking about this. We all have to be willing to recognize our own biases. We certainly have them. And we have to be willing to take a break when it feels too personal, because there's no space for hate speech or discrimination in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we will, I knew with 6 candidates that was going to happen. We will go to the rapid fire round. There'll be 6 rapid fire questions. Please leave your mics on for the entire time so that we don't have the mute situation. Your answers can be yes, no, or no opinion, but no elaborations. So, ready? Here's the first one. Should AB provide all-day kindergarten no matter the cost? Ms. Barrieault?
No.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
No opinion.
Mr. Campbell?
I've been Mr. Campbell before.
Ms. Campbell, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Gowing?
No.
Ms. Schmidt?
No opinion.
Ms. Ramachandran?
Yes.
Second one, should AB continue Acton's school choice options? Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramachandran?
Yes.
Ms. Barrieault?
Yes.
Mr. Gowing?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
No.
Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Do you support the high school's plan to D-level classes? Ms. Schmidt?
No.
Mr. Gowing?
No.
Ms. Ramachandran?
Yes.
Ms. Barrieault?
No opinion.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
No opinion.
Question 4, should Acton remain a member town of the Minuteman Regional School District? Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Gowing?
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramachandran?
Yes.
Ms. Barrieault?
Yes.
That's too bad, because Sudbury needs to get into that, and we need you to let us. Do you support a police resource officer in the high school? Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramachandran?
No opinion.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Ms. Barrieault?
No opinion.
Mr. Gowing?
Yes.
And the last one, have you attended any school committee meetings since September? Ms. Barrieault?
No.
Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Gowing?
Yes.
Ms. Ramachandran?
Yes.
Thank you. Now we go to the 1-minute closing statements. We'll do them in the opposite order from the opening statements. So that means, Ms. Smith, you will go first for 1 minute.
First of all, thank you for having me here tonight. Like I said in my opening statement, I believe that every student in our district deserves a quality education. I will work to advocate and support all of our students. If you have any questions and/or concerns regarding our schools, especially that rapid round question that I answered no opinion, please reach out to me. I'm happy to speak to you offline. Thank you.
Ms. Ramachandran.
Thank you to the league and also to residents who are coming to be informed about the candidates before them. I benefited from accommodations in this district. I benefited from educational accommodations when I went to college. I was also a student of color in the district, and I think that those perspectives are really helpful as a candidate for school committee and potentially a member of the school committee. I think nuance is really important, so these time limits and yes or no's were hard. Please reach out if you have questions. I would love to continue a conversation. I think that my policy experience and my involvement with the community, as well as a systems thinking perspective, positions me well to serve Acton residents on the school committee. And I think that we should have candidates who represent the diversity of our communities. I hope that you will consider me on April 25th, and I hope you all have a good night. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gowing.
I moved here 20 years and 10 days ago. And since moving to Acton, I've served in many, many different positions in the town and still do. From being on the Council on Aging or serving successfully for 2 terms on the Select Board to my current role as Acton President, the President of ActonTV. Whether it's Rotary or the Marine Corps or elected official or helping seniors, service has always been in my nature. 30-plus years in business management and finance and background in municipal finance, helping to understand the mechanics necessary to do this job. I think that this town is incredible. I think that it's very well integrated. I think that we have people who really care about what goes on in this town. And I would say, as my last position on school committee, is I want to increase communication to those people in town who do not have children in the system. My name is Mike Gowing, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
Yeah, thank you to the league. This has been a lot of fun. Running for school committee has been a wild ride. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it's been exciting. And I've been looking forward to this event since I realized this was going to be a contested election. So thanks for this. I love seeing all the people here, and I'm sure there's a lot more people out there attending virtually. Hi, Mom, hi, Dad. They're excited for me. So Acton is not some cliche New England town where everyone is reserved and quietly goes about their day and waves to their neighbor. But we have a vibrant and diverse community full of people that look for ways to be engaged. I mean, we have 6 people here running for 3 spots on the school committee. It's just awesome. But to that end, like, we really, this community wants to be engaged with our schools, and we need to make that happen. We have to open up communication. We have to be a school committee that's open, that people want to be engaged with, that supports the teachers, of course, yes. And so, I love the school district. I love having my kids in there. I love my wife working in there, and I want to make it the best we can make it. So thank you for your vote on April 25th.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell.
Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to everybody else for making this such a great discourse. I'm running for school committee because I've always had a passion for education, and I will fight for every student to have the opportunity to achieve their own best potential. There are many pathways to such achievement. My own kids have taken courses ranging from small group special ed to AP math and science. In scouting, I see kids across our community push themselves and achieve more than they imagined possible when supported and engaged. This is the environment I want to see in our schools. As I look ahead at what we need to do here to be successful, you heard me say yes to a whole bunch of things. But a lot of what I'm thinking there is yes and. We have to clearly define what we're talking about. We have to understand the costs. We have to study the possible courses of action. We have to have community discourse. If you disagree with me, I would love to talk to you. Those are the people I want to talk to, the people who think differently, because we need to understand each other and come to a really good choice because we've had that discourse. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Barrieault.
Thank you. I am so proud of our community that there are 6 of us sitting up here. I did not think that this would be the case, and it says so much about how important the community is to all of us. I appreciate seeing all the different strengths that would be brought to our committee, and I would like to be brought on to be the voice that will always stand up for humanity, that will always say there are people behind these numbers, there are experiences happening in our school buildings every single day that we need to keep in mind. It all matters, and what we leave our children with is the most important. And that's why I would love your vote and would love to be a part of a committee to serve our full district and each and every single student.
Thank you, and thank you all. And I'm going to now ask the candidates for the library trustees position. So there are 3 candidates for 1 3-year term as Memorial Library trustee. Only the 2 of the candidates are here with us tonight. Terra Friedrichs is also on the ballot. Yeah, this is the 1-year term. We'll get to the 3-year term in a little bit. So we're going to start with opening candidates from the 2 candidates who are here tonight. And the first person would be Annette Lochrie.
Thank you all for coming. I know it's been a long night already, so I talk fast, like everybody in Boston. I've been living in Acton since 1991 in the same house in West Acton Village. I sent my children to Acton schools. My husband was an English teacher at AB for 15 years. I volunteered for 8 years at Gates School as both of my daughters went through. And I was a classroom assistant for 4 years at McCarthytown School. During this time, I've been very actively involved in growing and administrating the local business community in West Acton Village. It's called WAVMA, West Acton Village Merchants Association. It's gotten bigger and bigger over time, and it's thriving, and it's bringing a lot of people into the village. I chair the original committee that renovated Gardner Field 20 years ago, and now things have gotten old, and it's being renovated again. I spent 23 years running a program I created called Tot Time at Citizens Library. It's a little reading program for 2- to 4-year-olds. Books have always been an essential part of our life in my family, and I value them immensely, which is why I'm looking to be a trustee at Memorial Library.
Thank you. And Mr. Schlesinger, Eric Schlesinger.
Thank you. So as an avid reader and frequent visitor of Acton's libraries, I understand the important role that libraries play in our society. Libraries are a place to borrow books, but it's also where citizens can gather, play, study. We've heard the word community a lot tonight, where you can kind of build that sense of community. Right now, one of the biggest threats facing libraries is with all the moving to e-readers, things like that. It's really essential now that libraries can offer relevant, engaging programming that will drive in foot traffic, keep people engaged, and continue to build that sense of community. The Acton libraries right now have a bunch of great programs. I really want to support them, continue to build on them. A couple quick ideas of adding tools to the Library of Things, providing DIY workshops, and life skills classes for teens and young adults. I'll stop there.
Thank you. And we have 3 questions for you. You escaped the rapid fire section, so you get 3 questions. So the first question is, what is the primary purpose of a community library? And we'll start with Mr. Schlesinger.
So the primary purpose is to serve the community it's in. I think in the actual role of being a trustee, writing, supporting policy, coming up with these programs like I was just mentioning, supporting the library director and the staff, those I think are the main goals.
I agree with that. And I think also a library is like the nucleus or the heart of the community. I think a library wants to be all-inclusive, to have something for everybody, particularly books, programs for youth and adults, be accessible to everybody, have computer capacity for people who don't have a computer, basically being the hub of the neighborhood. And that's how I see the library being.
Thank you. The Acton Memorial Library is a complex organization with multiple constituencies, a regulatory environment that includes accreditation, multiple sources of revenue, and high customer service demands. How does your background prepare you to help lead this organization forward? And we'll start with Ms. Lochrie.
I have a background in healthcare administration. I have a master's in public health. For a number of years, I oversaw a program in New England administering multi-million-dollar grants to physician organizations. So I realize how complex running a library can be. Not the same as a hospital or a physician group, but again, complex. So I think it gives me a good sense on how to parcel out things and integrate them at the same time.
Thank you. Mr. Schlesinger.
So I'm a clinical psychologist here in town. So I know that doesn't necessarily directly impact it, but I'm a quick learner. I'm a problem solver. So I know there'd be still a steep learning curve, but I have full faith I could get up to speed.
And finally, what should the library's policy be regarding requests to remove a book that a person finds offensive? Big issue these days. And we'll start with Mrs. Schlesinger first on this one.
Yeah, super important question. So there already is a policy at the Memorial Library, at least right now. So it goes through the library director. You have to be a citizen of Acton to make the request, which I think is hugely important. And after the library director makes a decision, if that person wants to appeal, it goes up to the trustees then. So I'm a very strong believer in a diverse set of opinions, so it would have to be pretty unusual circumstances, I feel, that we'd be wanting to take a book away just for political or cultural reasons or whatever. So I definitely want our citizens to be able to access all views.
I agree with that. I think anybody who watches the news or reads the paper knows that there's a move afoot all over the country for certain groups of people to get involved with libraries, ban books that they don't think are appropriate. Having to do with minorities, both culturally and physically, and I'm a very strong supporter of inclusiveness. And I think that goes for the books that people want to read as well. And I think it's an important delineation on books that should be kept versus not. And I think it's important that we have a policy on how that's done.
You guys were quick. As a reward, you get to do your 1-minute closing statement. And we'll in reverse order. So Mr. Schlesinger, you will go first.
Sure. So I'm the father of 2 young children, so we get to take advantage of the library on a weekly basis. The program's leaving with a huge stack of books. I'm just so impressed with the staff there. Special shout out to Robert in the children's section. He's awesome. The promoting literacy, too, has been a huge piece. Last summer, they did a program called Read Off the Beaten Path or something like that. And my son, who's 6 now, was so engaged, and it led to him reading and me reading to him, so like almost up to an hour every day, just because he was so thrilled about this program. So I'm so grateful. Libraries are so important. I'd be really honored for your vote, but also just in general, please vote and tell people to vote. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but tell your friends, tell your neighbors. These town elections have abysmal turnout, so please get people out.
Thank you. Ms. Lochrie.
I agree. My children are in the early 30s, but have been growing up from very young ages, reading a big tote bag full of books every night. Reading is essential. I think it builds character, it builds intelligence, it builds vocabulary. I created the Taught Time program, which is a reading program for 2 to 4-year-old children. I did that. I ran that once a week for 22 years at Citizens Library. It was a little program to establish an appreciation for books and libraries. It was multicultural. It always involved a craft at the end of the day, and I really enjoyed working with the children and trying to shape minds to love libraries and books. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. I appreciate it. Thank you, all the candidates. I am now going to read a statement from the unopposed candidate for Water District, Stephen Stuntz, because he was unable to be here tonight because there is a Water District meeting. So hopefully I won't botch it, and if I do, it's not his fault but mine. I am sorry not to be here tonight, but as the present chairman of the Acton Water District, it was important that I attend a regularly scheduled meeting. So let me say that I am delighted to be running again for the position of one of the 3 commissioners of the Acton Water District. I have served many years in this role and still find it fascinating. Once we get the policies, procedures, and equipment in place to solve each problem, there are new issues to address. As you are all aware, the latest issue is the realization that our regulatory bodies have come to the understanding of the hazardous nature of the forever chemicals. And I'm glad he didn't put the chemical name in there. At our latest annual meeting, we voted authorization to proceed with the planning for and potential installation of further treatment to remove these chemicals. We also voted to acquire the large parcel of land on Brook and Main Streets that has been in the Conant family for many years. This parcel will help not only the water supply for the town, because it contains potential bedrock wells, but also helps maintain the character of the town by keeping land in Acton Center as open space. These wells are different from all our other wells that are dug wells, assessing a shallower water supply than the bedrock wells possible on the Conant land. It is likely that their production will be less affected by changes in local weather conditions. This purchase is a culmination of 15 years of work with the Conant family, the Acton Water District, and the town. In the day-to-day operations, it is important that we continue to respond to our approximately 6,000 water users in the town. The billing and collections must go on, as well as testing the water at our treatment plants. New connections must be inspected. The work at Kelly's Corner must be monitored and repairs made to any water main breaks. While we do all of this, we continue to be involved with other water districts and associations, including talking to the MWRA about potential connections in the future. There is never a dull moment. Thank you for running these forums, and again, my apologies for not being able to be there in person. And again, that's a statement from Stephen Stuntz, who's a candidate for the Acton Water District Commissioner. And now, there are 2 positions on the ballot for which there are no candidates. A Memorial Library trustee for a 3-year term, and the Water District Clerk for a 3-year term. There is space on the ballot for you to write in the name of a candidate you think qualified for the position. When you write in a candidate's name, you must also remember to fill in the oval next to their name as if you were voting for them, because otherwise you're not voting for them. I want to thank all of you, all the candidates, your willingness to run for office. That's what makes our towns run, and for participating tonight. And now I'll turn the program back over to Pat Clifford to close.
Isn't she great? Amazing. We're going to close this up right on time, I think, and I want to thank you all for your patience and participation. I leave you with 3 things to think about, and a lot of these are for the audience who's not here. First, check your voter registration. You have a few more days this week. If there's anything you need to do, if you moved in town and you didn't update it, the deadline is next Friday. Figure out how you want to vote. There are 3 options for you. You can vote by mail. You can vote absentee if you find you're going to be out of town at the last minute. You need to do that. Or you're going to be able to vote in person, which is April 25th. It's Tuesday. All the voting is at the R.J. Gray School, the junior high. It's actually in the gymnasium. All the precincts. You don't have to go anywhere else. To confirm any information, answer any questions, your neighbor says, well, I can't remember, blah, whatever, tell them to go on the town's website or to email clerk@actonma.gov, and their specific situation can be addressed. So thank you all for coming. Thank the committee who put this together for us, and certainly thank Nancy. Great job.